Hello, everybody. My name is Stacey Agdern. Welcome to the final episode of this season's Chippy Chicks. We have had a wonderful season, and like the NHL at the moment and the PHL before it, PWHL before it, we are coming to the end of our season. So, without further ado, let me very proudly say that I am sitting here with Danica Flynn and Kelly Jameson, and we're going to talk about a bunch of different things. So why don't we get started? Um, One of the interesting things that happened comparatively recently was that the colors and the font for 2025 for the new Utah team have been announced. And it's interesting. We've been kind of talking a little bit about this consistently, but I recently saw an argument specifically because Ryan, in conjunction with what's been happening more recently with the failure of the land auction in Arizona, people were talking about how Ryan Smith basically like saved this team in a lot of ways. And the argument back then in terms of the letters and the logos was that they knew they were getting a hockey team. Should they have been prepared with the branding, or is the holding pattern, one, the new tradition, and two, what do we think of the name choices? And there were conversations that the conversations that I saw that led me to this particular question were, number one, the similarity between the colors that Utah has picked and the colors of the the colors of the Buffalo Buttes from the PHF/NWHL, and how very similar the fonts and the logos were. But also, there are a lot of people who were kind of upset that they didn't involve purple, simply because the Utah Jazz have a lot of purple in their uniforms, and a lot of cities, a lot of professional teams across different cities have um, similarity of color and logo. Not logo, but more colors. Like when they were talking about the PWHL logos, for example, they wanted to have a seafoam green to match the Liberty. So anyway, thoughts? Is this an issue? Is this a non-issue? Is this something that um, comes up every time a new team shows up? And should we expect a non-name for a year as they figure things out? Should they have figured things out like the Kraken before they start playing? What is
I'll go. So I already told you my opinion about this. But I think they already have a name because they have six names that they said are still voting, but they already said that this year they're calling themselves the Utah Hockey Club. So I'm like, that kind of seems like you already made the choice. Like to
yeah.
me, the colors I didn't note it. I didn't realize like make that correlation with the buttes until you pointed
Yeah.
it out, and I'm like, that's
Mhm.
interesting, but I didn't really think about
Yeah.
it. I think the colors they picked are because all of the other names have like a winter type theme. So I
Hmm.
thought the colors, I wasn't bothered by the colors. Philly does not have a universal color for all of their teams. So to me, it doesn't bother me at all
Okay.
because
Hmm.
I couldn't imagine the Eagles not being green, and I couldn't imagine the Flyers being black and orange. I couldn't imagine them going to a blue and red. Like
Yeah.
the Union is blue, Phillies are red. They also sometimes use blue, but mostly they're red. And
Hmm.
the 76ers are like red, white, and blue, but it makes sense because they're
Yeah, because
the
they're, yeah.
76ers. It's like that whole,
Yeah.
so
The
that makes sense
colonial,
for
like,
them. Yeah. I'm pretty sure the math, I think at one point they had like William Penn as a mascot, so like it made
yeah,
sense, but
yeah.
so it doesn't bother me. And I think that's my unique perspective from being from Philly, where Pittsburgh, they do. Like all of theirs are
Yeah.
similar, like the black and yellow. So I like the cohesive, it's nice, but like coming from a place that doesn't have the cohesiveness, I'm like, I don't think it really matters. Like,
Yeah, I had never thought about that before, actually. Like I didn't, whether cities have that kind of matching colors or similar colors. And when I thought about it, I realized that here in Winnipeg, we kind of do, sort
Yeah.
of. but we only have, I mean, Winnipeg's a small city. We only have a CFL football team other than, well, we actually do have basketball now. And I don't know what colors they use because I don't watch basketball. But but the blue is very prominent for the Winnipeg Jets and for the Blue Bombers. Obviously, they're Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
Yeah.
The colors that they picked when I read about it, they had some meaning to them, like the black and the blue and the white. The white symbolizes the ice of the snow in the mountains, and the blue is the mountains, and the black is some kind of rock, I think, or something. So they had a reason for it. So,
Mhm.
okay, I'll go with that. And I also had not made any connection between the, um, is it, what Buttes is it? Buffalo
Buffalo,
Buttes?
yeah.
I don't know that team. So I never saw any
Yeah.
connection there. But I do think as far as the name goes, like I hope they're not going permanently with hockey club because that's
No,
just
no.
Right.
awkward, right? Like
It was
how can you how can you have fans sitting in the arena cheering go hockey club? Like it's just it
I
that's
know. But aren't the
yeah, it's
Canadians
like
technically Club de hockey, like the Habs, like the Canadians? So like, but like they're an older team, so I feel like they could have like they have more of the history
other
behind it,
yeah,
So like,
no. It
yeah,
can't be that. It can't be
yeah,
that. They just miss out on so many, like a
yeah,
mascot
it's
and a
yeah.
logo and all those kind of branding
it's
I'm
things
just
just
like
yeah,
without
I
when they
mean
a
said
good name.
that
Like
the first season
it's
they're gonna
just
be just the hockey club. I'm like, did you
it's
make
so
a decision already? Like,
it's and
yeah,
even
that's
even for
and
the
that's the
first season, I think they could have come up with a name,
yes.
a
yeah,
better name.
Like it was kind of weird, I have to say, like following with PWHL New York, like going, okay, like so, it was just very, very, I mean, one of the many reasons it was weird following PWHL New York was not only where they were playing, but also, okay, so who do I cheer? Why do I cheer? Let's go New York, go, like whatever, let's
Yeah.
basketball,
it is
like,
strange.
like no one other. But I will, speaking of other New York teams, it was kind of hilarious. I don't know if any of you saw this, in uniforms. The Giants have a centennial year uniform, and this uniform is supposed to like celebrate the history of the Giants. All it did, and literally like every single like hockey commentator I follow and a whole bunch of other people were like, "Oh, those are Montreal Canadiens uniforms. They are ridiculous." It was like like the New York Football Habs or something like that. It
Oh
was
my God.
nuts. And before the end of the show, I will email someone the picture and you guys can show it because I literally it was just ridiculous.
That's funny.
Um, oh my God. But speaking of team insanity and connections to the PWHL, there was a bit of a nut, sort of a wild few weeks in the PWHL. Did you guys hear about what happened in Minnesota?
Um, only a little. Like I saw it kind of tangentially, so I haven't really been following it.
I had just heard that they had drafted a controversial pick.
Mhm.
Right.
So either right before or right after, because there was a lot of also speculation about like how this happened. Um, they fired their general manager,
Yeah.
who by all accounts was a very lovely person who, had like really good conversations with the players, who was just a really good soul and was and like when they hired her, they were all excited because, her history in Minnesota hockey was pretty extensive. But she was fired not very long before the draft. And apparently, like every single one of like a lot of the draft plans that they had made went out the window
Hmm.
and they drafted this individual. And there is a lot of speculation that her firing was related to the drafting of this individual. Um, and in the very few in the period after this, um, the coach who is friends with a particular player on this team, who apparently has been revealed as like one of the power players on this team. And by power players, I mean behind the scenes as
Yeah, yeah,
well.
yeah.
Was the one to make this pick. No, actually, they had someone else. They had the assistant general manager come in to make the pick to try to like somehow like hide it or whatever. And there was this whole like conversation about why they picked her and like what went on and what happened. And as more conversation happens, it turns out that the player was much more involved than people thought she was,
Oh,
which is a very interesting thing. And by the player, I mean the one that was on the team before.
yeah.
And like to me, it's just I think about it in two ways. The first is what had to happen in that office, like in these
Yeah,
kinds of decisions, like what went through these people's minds to blow up all of this for what? And then the second is what the locker room is going to look like and what the locker room is going to be like in the
yeah,
wake of all
yeah,
of
yeah.
this.
Huh. So there's politics everywhere in hockey.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And that seems like really unethical.
Yes.
Like to
I
be,
mean, again, like,
is this someone who's currently playing on the team or just they previously played?
so the person at the player supposedly, again, this is all
All
speculation, like
alleged. All
all of
alleged.
again, like
That's
for
why we're
all
not
the
saying names.
yes. So the player that is actually it was a kind of a big of a triumph that this player came back to play for this team this year. She was part of the inaugural squad. One of the reasons why the original coach was fired, I don't know if it's necessarily why the original coach was fired, but like one of the reasons that this new guy was hired was because he was close with her.
Oh,
Like
like,
if you look at the reports and stuff that talk about this guy's hiring, and I think he was actually a coach of the U.S. national team
Okay.
at some point. He got brought in because he was close. Yeah, it's a whole thing. Again, like
Kelly's face.
kind of, you know, again, speculation, tons of, again,
Right.
all of this is speculation. All of this is like gathering information from places and speculating because that's what we do. We're fiction writers. Like we think about things that way.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. I get it. Yeah. You've
yeah,
got a lot more information gathered than I have about that because I wasn't really,
I
I
didn't know
sort
any
of
of
was
this.
aware of what was on the surface, but I guess there's a lot more going on behind the scenes.
like
Yeah, I haven't really been. So Philly doesn't have a team, so I'm like, who do I root
mhm.
for? And I was like, I'm gonna root for whoever has the coolest logo, and I don't have any of those yet. So I've kind of
No,
been not really paying too
yeah,
much.
Yeah,
Like I follow them on Instagram, and I see like the suit stuff, like the outfits that they post.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
see them, but I haven't been really like paying attention to all of this stuff. So I feel like Stacey, you always bring more like information to the
yeah.
table for us because we're like, oh, we didn't know anything about
I
this.
didn't know all that stuff.
It's like, I mean, again, like the just as a side note, thinking about the conversation, like you would have followed the team with the coolest logo. Again, that goes back to Utah, where
Right.
like like you
Right?
know, like
How
a lot of
important
people are
that
going to
is.
be like for other sports, like soccer, like sometimes like sure, fine, they have team city names as the names of the or state names of the as the names of or like geographic area names is the name of like a soccer club, but it's not a tradition or a football club across the border, across the ocean from here. But like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
No.
not a tradition in hockey. It's not
No.
like it's not something that we do. It's mostly because there are many teams in a geographic area, and you're just like, well,
Yeah.
like even if there isn't more than one in a league, you will absolutely find at some level of sporting, you will find someone, and it's
Yeah.
like it's just it's yeah, and it's sort of again as you were saying, Kelly, earlier, like not having that logo, not having that conversation separates fans, separates people from,
Yeah, yeah,
the basic cheers, like,
yeah.
you know,
Now, how
like
many teams have we named, ladies?
I fully, I I did name the entire league for my,
yeah, I
but not all of those team names are in my books. It's just I did it for myself so that I could like pick those
yeah,
names out. But yes, and some of them like I
God.
didn't- I couldn't think of one for Boston, so they just ended up the Bears, and I was like, whatever.
Works, that
Close
works.
enough.
I mean, it's hard work though, like coming up
It
fictional
is.
names. Like
I
there
mean,
was,
It is.
it's hard, but we did it.
yeah,
Like
we do it.
I
And
more
I think,
than once. Like
mhm,
we've done
I
so
think
how many teams?
mine was a placeholder. Like I wasn't gonna like stick with that. I just needed something because originally I was trying to find something to be like Broad Street Bullies type, but I didn't want to use
mhm,
that
yep,
exact, but I was like, oh, let's just call it Bulldogs for now. And I kept it. And then I think there was actually like a roller hockey team, like or something, because a reader told me this, and I was like, well, it doesn't matter because it's fake anyway.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I'm like, but like so that's the thing. And then we're also like trying to double check that no other hockey roommates authors
Yeah,
Yeah,
the name too.
exactly.
God.
Yeah, not just real teams, but fictional teams, right?
Yeah, and it's
Hmm.
like there's only so many names, and then it's like,
I know,
what is
seriously.
that?
Oh
Yeah,
God.
even yeah, even though you try, it
You
still
try,
ends up
and then it's like,
somebody else
well,
has.
I published
Yeah,
first, and they're publishing their book in
yeah,
this year, so it's like I'm not gonna say anything to them, but like I'm not
Yeah,
not using myself as an example, just like a
yeah,
hypothetical.
no.
But then it's like, oh,
or
what do
Like,
you
I
end
do?
up in a situation like Jamie Davenport, another
yeah, oh
hockey romance author,
God.
who created her team name in Seattle, and then when the Kraken were coming, they were considering using the name that she had used, which she trademarked,
Yeah.
thankfully. So
Yes.
luckily she, got a lawyer and was like, don't do that. But I
Mine.
mean,
Yeah.
who even thinks about stuff like that could happen? Ooh,
Right.
Yeah. No, like, but yeah, like it's so funny. Like, and when you come up with like the right ones or the wrong ones and like how they fit and they don't, like it's kind of hilarious. There is an actual in joke in my books because I somehow decided to name the Toronto team the Sirens.
oh,
So like it's bad. And so literally the inside of joke in the books is how bad the name is and why the hell they decided to name it the Sirens.
that works.
So there you go. That's because like yeah, no, I am the
And I
worst
think,
at such things.
yeah, and I think when I like picked all of them, I did try to like pick ones that like, is there mountains or like this, or I
Yeah,
just was like a random animal.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
there,
would
there,
look at
that's a
like
good one.
animals that are in that region
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
and
So I
geographical.
did, there was a thought behind all of those names that I did
Yeah,
yeah.
pick, even
yeah.
if they aren't ever like the whole league list is not going to appear anywhere but in my
That's
note to myself.
that's
But
world building though. Like that's
yeah,
part of what
Yeah,
we do
yeah,
as writers all the time. Like we know we may or
yeah,
may not need this team in our books, but we need to know
exactly.
what the league looks like. We need to know what the league feels like. If there's a trade of a player coming from this one of these random teams, like we need to know the name.
yeah,
And
Yeah,
it'll help us like understanding these things. And I think like going back to the Arizona Utah question, like we know we're going to potentially have to deal with one of these teams, which means we create in advance all of the information we're going to need to write our books and set in a league that is not real, but it has to be real enough for us.
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Love that segue. I tell you. Um, so here's the thing. Speaking of leagues and things like that, I am in a very different place than I was the last time. I was we had an episode. Um, the last time I was excited, I was terrified. Um, but I will admit that ever since my Rangers left the playoffs, I have not been watching. I've been following on social media.
Oh,
Part of the reason is that I am not in New York at the moment, and that house that I'm staying at is not necessarily so hockey friendly. So like I can follow and stuff and watch, but not. And so question becomes, because there's a lot of things going on, and I think um the first is one of the larger storylines during the last round. So, is the referees, but more importantly, Kelly, you've been watching what's going on. How do you think the series has gone? Like the final series has gone. Like, what do you think is happening? What do you like? What's happening? Like, has there been any really amazing moments that you thought about?
so I not being completely invested in the series because my team is out also. It's a different experience watching
Yes.
when you don't really care that much. So, but
Yeah.
I'll pick somebody to cheer for. So I'm cheering for Edmonton because they're the Canadian team, and we're going to talk about that, I think.
Yeah.
But also I would not be mad if Paul Maurice won because I really like him. He coached the Jets for many years, and I do like him. I think he's a smart guy. But there's been some stuff that's happened that kind of anyway, I'm still cheering for Edmonton.
Yeah.
So it's been
Mhm.
interesting. The first three games where Florida was just like dominant and
Right.
won those first three
Mhm.
games, then it seemed like, oh, Edmonton's toast. And the morning of game 4, right? Yeah, when they could have won it all, it was the game went back to
Yep.
Edmonton. Game 4, they could have won it all, and they interviewed Maurice, and he was just he was like so philosophical and so like, oh, you've got to enjoy the moment, and he just seemed like smug to me, like he was sure they were
Mhm.
going to win it that night.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh. And then Edmonton came out that night and just
Eight.
so I mean, I have to admit I'm enjoying this comeback for
Mhm.
them. I'm
Yes.
enjoying it. And I like Maurice, I do. I'm kind of enjoying seeing him flounder a little bit because he doesn't know. And I remember this from when he was the Jets coach. Like when they're losing, when they're winning, he's like awesome. You will get sound bites from him, quotes from him. He's a smart guy and he knows hockey. And like listening to him is I enjoy it. But when
Yeah.
the team is losing, he kind of loses it a little bit and it doesn't have his things together quite so much. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more later too. But
Yeah. Mhm.
but so seeing him on the bench absolutely losing his shit over that call the other night where the goal
Mhm.
got overturned on offside. And I have my own opinions about those offside calls when they are that close. Like, oh my God, it
Mhm.
just seems crazy. But they made the call, and apparently it was looked like it was offside by a fraction of an inch or whatever. But he was losing his shit. It was just kind of funny. But he's passionate. He's passionate about the game.
Yeah.
So I like that. So I've been enjoying it kind of, and I especially
Mhm.
haven't been enjoying these last three games where Edmonton came
Yeah.
back, and
God. Oh.
Yeah, I
it's
haven't
just
watched,
crazy.
yeah. I haven't watched
Mhm.
all the games. I watched some and then I was like, oh, they're three like up, like this that's like crazy, like they're gonna sweep. And then they didn't. And I was like, okay, like that's fine. And then I was like, oh no, they're not. Like, and I don't care. Like,
Mhm.
I think either team, I would like either team to win. Like, I think, if Edmonton won, that would be great. Like, that'd be cool. Like if Florida win, that'd be cool too, because they haven't ever won anything. So like that's always like a fun thing.
Yes.
And then like my partner who like doesn't care about hockey. He was like, "What happened to them?" Because like Florida was, I'm like, I think they just
Uh-huh.
hockey. Like I think they just had it in
Yeah.
the bag and just like
Mhm.
they
And they
just
let
Yeah.
Edmonton through, and I like, yeah, like So obviously, or not so obviously, I am rooting for Edmonton. Um, you know, Ch like Chuck Knobloch. It's not Chuck Knobloch, but like Knobloch was an assistant. He coached in Hartford for years.
Oh yeah.
And when there was a period during the initial bubble where it like a later period of time when David Quinn had COVID and he could not coach. And so they brought Knobloch up to coach. And the team had not been doing well under Quinn during that period. But Knobloch came up and like it was beautiful. We were on a winning streak and it was fantastic. And at that point, I was sitting there going, please, like, please let him be the next coach. Please, I would like him to get a try. And like, literally, there was a segment of the fan base, the Rangers fan base, who every single time there was a moment where like a coach was fired, first was Gallant, then Gallant went, and then it became Laviolette. But like every single time, there was a very large segment of the Rangers fan base who was like, "Come on, like let's bring Knobloch into the mix, like give him the job, please." So when he got hired in Edmonton, it was kind of amazing to watch, and like watching him do what he does with the players that he has is phenomenal. And like I have had my own personal dream in the back of my head for years. But I very much would like Edmonton, obviously for many reasons. But I love like how everyone's coming together. I love like the excitement in Edmonton. I love the joy of the like them figuring them out. Like I've been watching the highlights, thank God, because they're available. But like it's
Frankly, I'm jealous of them. And it's hard for me to cheer for Edmonton because there is a big Jets Edmonton rivalry going back
Mhm.
to Jets 1.0. Like
Yeah.
it was always Edmonton that knocked the Jets out of the playoffs,
Mhm.
always. And that was back in the days of Gretzky. And
Yeah.
like it was, I mean, they were a good team, but it was always them who knocked the Jets out of the playoffs. So we hated the
Mhm.
Oilers. And I still have a hard time with that. And whatever. I'm cheering for them because they're the Canadian team, but I'm jealous. Like I can't imagine. I watch the stuff that's
Mhm.
happening in the city, like the crowds
Yeah,
that are gathered
it's
outside the arena for the parties and
yeah.
everything that's going on there. And I can only imagine what it would be
Mhm.
like.
Yeah. Oh my God. Like, so this actually kind of moves us to another question too. Like, so we'll go back to the other stuff in a minute, but like this is kind of a lighter question. Like, here's the thing. I am from a market where one of the teams in the league that they play in is like, it's America's team. And like everybody gets annoyed because like, no, it's baseball. Not everybody likes the Yankees. Like, just because like, I grew up like with family who loves them doesn't mean that the entire country is going to love them. They pull this with football all the time with the Dallas Cowboys, and it drives me bananas. Like I'll hear the advertisements and go, like, no,
Talk about the
people hate
Cowboys here.
exactly. Like people hate them. Like, why are you trying to position them as America's team? It is nonsense. So the question is, has this positioning ever actually worked anywhere? Because I don't think it has.
No, I don't
Like
think
this
so.
kind of positioning, like positioning a professional league team that is not a national team as a country's national representative. Like, no, it doesn't work. And like all it does is get people annoyed, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Well, I wish Fortune was here so she could talk about this because being
yeah,
from Calgary or cheering for Calgary, because he's close to Calgary, like there's
yeah.
a huge rivalry between Calgary
Mhm.
and Edmonton. So, like, are Calgary fans cheering for Edmonton? I don't think so.
No,
Yeah.
exactly.
I
Like
think
you would exactly like
I feel like she said that she doesn't think they would in like the last
mm,
episode. She's like, I
yeah.
don't
Yeah.
think they will. Um, which is interesting. I have a reader who likes the Canucks,
Mhm.
and the Flames. And I'm like, how? And she's like, I'm not gonna explain it.
I mean, multiple cheering for multiple teams is like an easy thing because you follow players. Like,
Yeah, but that's
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
yeah, okay, but
So
yeah,
dear.
but I mean, I like, I because of a bunch of things that I've been doing, I've got to know a bunch more Islanders fans. And like when I tell them that A, I'm a Ranger fan, and B, I like Sorokin, and they're like, what? How? Like, how can you like them and be, and I was like, well, Shesterkin and Sorokin are besties. I want the besties to be happy. I want them to thrive. Like, I
I
want,
I usually am of the philosophy, oh, that guy used to play for the Flyers, so I'll
yeah,
root for the
Yeah,
I'll be like
yeah,
yeah,
making
exactly.
sense.
But like,
yeah,
yeah, like the,
Or oh, their coach used to coach for the Flyers, so I'll
yeah,
root.
yeah. Well, I used
but
to
yeah,
cheer for
like,
Chicago because Jonathan Toews is from Winnipeg.
Yeah.
yeah. But like, you follow players, you follow players, you follow coaches. Like when you find out that players are friends in the off season, if they're not um players who punch goaltenders, then like, okay, like, can we say I forget who it was, but it was disclosed that someone was friends with that guy, and I was like, are you kidding me? How?
And well, not to mention that like the players on the teams are so I'm not sure what the most recent stats are, but about half of the players in the NHL are Canadian, and the rest are like American and European, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So, players on any one given team are not always going to be Canadian
Mhm.
or American, or like the Jets have so many American players and European players. I think the Edmonton Oilers have the most Canadian players of Canadian teams. I'm not sure, but still, I mean, the players are all different nationalities.
Yeah, like
Whatever.
as I said, all you do all so yeah, so all you do when you try to push a professional team in any league as the representative of a country is you piss people off. That's what happens every single time.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of pissing people off, um, a referee in another sports league who's famous for many things, including officially denying a particular pitcher's perfect game, retired recently. And the excitement heard round like social media
Yeah, I
Twitter
remember this.
was like sports Twitter was like palpable because this guy was like known for like the things that a referee shouldn't be known for. Like a referee should be known for fair and equitable calling of games, like not the fact that like his ridiculousness and mistake cost someone a perfect game. Like it was, and like if you look at the information, it was just a really bad call. It was a very obviously missed bad call. It was a whole thing. It was like, yeah, like apparently there was like a whole what's the word am I looking for? There was a whole like apology and a whole thing. Like again, if you look this guy up, you will that's what you will find at the top of his list. So
So I am not familiar with this whole thing
so
in another sport.
so the guy's
Sports
name was
ball.
Angel Hernandez. I want to say the guy's named Angel Hernandez, and he was a baseball referee. But like,
Yeah.
and it was again like it made me think a lot about a lot of conversations that were happening during the last round. And apparently, with the
Oh,
statistics, it's easier to tell the record of a ref each time they've refed a refed a game with a team. Like you can literally tell like how many times like a team has won under a particular ref. Like it is a very interesting set of statistics.
yeah.
And like it's interesting because it came up during, as I said, it came up during the last round. Um and in a lot of ways, and like a lot of calls on, in the playoffs, the reffing is different, obviously. Then again, we are also talking about a league that now pays attention to hands because of something that happened a number of years ago between Ottawa and Pittsburgh, where an Ottawa player's finger was pretty much amputated by a Pittsburgh player, and now we pretty much pay attention all the time to calls on hands. So the question is, what do you guys think of NHL refereeing? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? What do you think?
Ugh. It seems
Do
like
you
this
think
year's been, it seems like this year's been kind of bad. Like, I mean, through the regular season, the playoffs, to be honest, I'm watching the playoffs. Bad roughing is not standing out to me, but through the regular season, and it like, there's so much conspiracy theory about it. I go on the Jets fan groups, and it's always, oh, the refs don't want the Jets to win. It's always that. And but every team's fan base thinks that. So I don't really think it's a conspiracy theory, but I think there's been some unfortunate reffing this season, which like, I don't know what the solution is. Better training for refs, better, like, I don't know.
I think the fact that none of us know what goaltender interference is because it's called so vastly different,
Yeah.
is like an example of poor repping. Like,
Yeah.
because it's like, what does it mean? I don't know. Players don't know. Coach doesn't know. This ref thinks he knows. This one doesn't. Like, I don't know.
It's like totally subjective and up to whoever is.
Yeah. So I
And it's
think
like,
that that needs to be figured out. Like, what are the actual rules here? Because it seems like nobody knows.
yeah, exactly.
So yeah.
Yeah,
With offsides.
there's been some weird stuff, and I don't think it's biased in favor of any team, much as the conspiracy theorists want to think it. I think it's just
Yeah.
bad roughing.
Yeah, like as I said, like I think I would like more consistency, and I would absolutely love to see a league that's more like proactive as opposed to like waiting for the next shoe to drop.
Yeah, exactly. Being proactive about it would be, right?
Like if you're gonna tighten rules, tighten them across the board
Yeah,
and
yeah,
make everybody know kind of
yeah.
thing. Um,
Okay, we should talk about that open heart
yes. So
moving along.
here we go.
That was really interesting.
So okay. So my first thought is like in a lot of ways, like I knew all of the events,
Yeah,
a lot of that were happening as a
yeah.
result. How much did either of you guys know before diving in? Like,
Not much.
Like you, I think the events, like,
Yeah.
oh, he has to, he's retiring, or then he's signing with another team, and it's like, but like all that behind the scenes stuff, no, none of that.
Yeah.
I did not know.
Yeah, I only knew like when he went to the Capitals, and then when he like officially was like like he has heart stuff, and then like when he made the official. So like I haven't really followed his career all that much. Why would I? Like,
Yeah.
Right. I think
Okay.
the first thing that struck me about watching is that Henrik Lundqvist is a beautiful man.
Yes.
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 Like, holy shit. And he has a twin brother. I
I
didn't
didn't know
know
he had a twin.
Yep. Played for Dallas for many years before going back to,
Who's
I don't know
also
exactly who.
beautiful. And
Yep.
his friend is beautiful. Like, our all
Yeah, his life coach. I was like, that's interesting. Yep.
Yeah, the life
Okay.
coach was interesting, and I
Yep.
thought that was interesting
Very
to
cool angle to like.
it makes sense. And I think it makes sense, especially like
Yep.
to have someone outside of the community too. I think he was not really any like hockey type guy.
He's not.
So I think it's good
just
to
in a
have
sports,
someone
like,
that's like outside of this community you're a part of that can give you like unbiased like advice. So I thought that was interesting that he had that, because I don't think I've heard other players talk about having a life coach or anything like that before.
I want a life coach.
yes. Like it doesn't surprise me about Hank too, because like especially in like this phase of his life, he's he's always been, and I think there's like I know Kreider has something. I'm not sure. I know it. Like there are players who have had um professionals helping them to a degree, whether it's adjusting to life after hockey to whatever. Um, but I definitely like that perspective because um the way that the life coach was talking, he was talking specifically about like how athletes have a different mentality, have a very specific mentality, and how to kind of make that adjustment from playing and from searching for wins in sports to what happens next. And I think that was why, like,
Yeah.
it was just really interesting to see that.
There was a few things that he said that I thought um that kind of resonated with me when he said that, he had spent a lot of time analyzing his game, obviously,
Mhm.
probably his whole career,
Yep.
but not a lot of time analyzing himself.
Yep.
And so he's at that point in his life where he really needs to figure out who
Hmm.
he is,
Yep.
not just a goalie.
Hmm.
And the idea that playing with another jersey on was he was going to do it, he was willing to do it, but his heart said no. And I
Yep.
was like, oh,
Yep.
and it said his heart said no twice. So it was like,
Hmm.
oh,
Yeah. That's, um, I will say, and then I'll let you talk, Danica. The period where I lost it, I absolutely lost it, was the jersey retirement ceremony. Because going from that realization, like I can't play for another team, to the jersey retirement ceremony from his POV. Again, like I saw, again, a lot of these events I saw, a lot of these events I know about, like, but like those moments with that jersey retirement ceremony and then hearing his perspective,
yeah,
tears, bawling, like literally thick, like wild sobs. My best friend wanted to know what was going on. I was like,
No.
like it's the documentary, it's gonna break me. And it
yeah.
did there. Um,
I'm sure that was more emotional for you, Stacey, being
Yeah.
a Rangers fan, like, and seeing that. I would,
like I mean, watching like the sort of the trajectory of his career, like memories. I was,
yeah,
following through those games, like
yeah,
2014 Cup final. I was having my own medical difficulties and like watching and like, you know, um, like all of these things like took me back to that time. And then um one of the other things that I noticed was that um they uh they only interviewed a very particular group of Rangers, um of Ranger players. And you're always like wondering like who keeps um the connection with players after they moved on or after they retired and stuff. Um Dominic Moore, who coincided with Henrik's time, is now back in Toronto. Um Carl Hagelin, who did not talk about his Rangers years, but wow. I'm glad to like see that like he had that friend from New York in Washington, to kind of like ease the transition to if he was going to play there, like Dan Girardi, um, and obviously like Mike Richter, and Kevin Weeks. The fun fact, I don't know if you guys know this. I know they talked about this in the documentary, but the fact that like remembering that Kevin Weeks was going to be like the next goaltender for the Rangers and Hank was the backup, and then something happened to Weeks and he stepped in and never left. It's kind of like how that went. Um, let's see. Anything else in particular that you guys feel like you want to talk about? Any sort of other like thoughts about like how the documentary was told, like how they
I
told
thought
the
it was
story?
really, I thought it was beautiful and very moving. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And it was just interesting to like get a player's perspective on stuff.
Yeah.
I think he like has seamlessly transitioned into color
Yes.
commentary. Like I think he does
Mm.
a really good job. Um,
Hmm.
I also just like listening to him like talk too, like just how he talks,
Yeah.
like what his accent sounds like to me, because that was like sort of research for me. So like I was
Hmm.
really paying attention to like how he spoke and stuff like that. Um, yeah, I've always thought he was great. Like
Hmm. Yeah, no, it's been wonderful watching him. He started doing color commentating on MSG Networks, which is the Rangers, obviously, which is the Rangers like home network.
Yeah.
So like, he would show up and then it like him and his one of his former backups, whose name I cannot remember at the moment, Valley Cat, um, would the two of them go back and forth and it's fantastic. And then every once in a while it's Brian Boyle. So like the three of them with the in studio host, you know, John Giannone, they are a great trio. And then because they do the mid period, the intermission analysis. That's that group. And then seeing him jump from there and share time with MSG and go onto the national stage at TNT, that was a really cool thing to see happen. Like I was surprised and but fairly excited about that. So
yeah.
um let's see. Yeah. So
Okay,
no,
we're getting close to
Yeah,
time.
I'm surprised. I thought we wouldn't like
Yeah.
not have enough to talk about.
well, it's kind of like one of the things I love about like us and like whether it's three of us, whether it's all five of us, we all have opinions on a lot of things. And like if you've got these general topics of things, we will find our way to kind of have conversations about things within. And I think that's an important
Yeah.
like we can talk about things we know, we can, and I think like it's just important to have these kinds of conversations, have fun and enjoy ourselves, like
Yeah.
especially if the topics are general and not really really specific.
Yeah.
So anything, so apparently the off season has started early. A couple of trades have been made, nothing big, but as we head towards the draft on Tuesday, um any news, any things that you guys have heard from your teams, or my God, the preseason schedule's out already. Is
Yeah,
that
it is.
am
Yeah.
I
Yeah. I think next week's going to be busy. I think there's going to be lots of activity.
yeah.
I'm interested to see how the draft goes and trades that are happening before that because there's already stuff. There's rumors
Mhm.
floating around about Winnipeg, and we'll guess we'll see. But
Yeah.
I think it'll be busy.
Mhm. Danica, do you expect a busy off season?
I don't know. And
Hmm.
I've kind of like just I'm not holding my breath on anything.
Yeah.
We'll kind of see. I don't know. I feel like we're just in a perpetual build, like rebuild.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, I will say that it was very, very interesting to see Barclay Goodrow get waived and sent to San Jose. Um, in a very sort of gentleman's agreement for them to kind of get him off the waiver wire. Um, he was great during the playoffs. He was wonderful, but like he didn't do as much as needed during the regular season. Whether whether it was whether the issue was that Quinn was fired or not, I don't know. I'm glad Quinn was fired because he deserved to be fired because dear God, San Jose, I feel so bad. Um, but I hope he does well in San Jose. And I'm interested in seeing what happens next. Um, Speaking of what happens next, I think are we at either suit picks or wildest thing?
Wildest things. So we want to go through these? We got like
You got a ton. Let's talk
Yeah,
about
you got to talk
we
about
got
because
we
they
got
let's
a
made
do
few,
you
this.
but
laugh.
let's go. They're all like sort of quick things. So
Yeah.
the first wildest thing was the woman who flashed her boobs at the Oilers game, which was hilarious. I mean, because that just doesn't happen in hockey very often.
No.
But I mean, what's more hilarious than that is all the social media stuff that happens around it and afterwards, right? So it's just like, oh, okay, that happened. And then the next thing you know, she's like, the internet has found her and identified
Of
her.
course.
And again, Edmonton's not that big a city. I'm sure it wasn't that hard to find out who
No.
exactly she was. And then the next thing I know, she's on Spit and Chicklets,
Oh
like
my
being
God.
interviewed. And she
Oh,
said she had, after it
God.
happened, she shut down all her social media because, like, whoa, like she doesn't
Yeah.
want all this attention. But I guess she did want some attention because she goes on Spit and
Of
Chicklets, like,
all the places, I'm
right,
sorry. Like,
right.
what?
And so she's, sharing her stuff there. And apparently at the last game, she was partying with them in a suite. So yay for her.
Okay.
Anyway, that was one wild thing that happened. And then so we talked about Paul Maurice earlier, and I was like, I like him. I really like him. He's good for like a good interview and a good soundbite and a good line. But people have been making these AI videos of him. The first one was, oh, it was weeks ago. I can't remember what game it was after. And it was him like, oh, I think it was after, was it against, did they play against New York? Was that?
Yeah, that was the last. That was that was the Rangers' last round.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think he was like talking about, I can't remember all the things that he said, but it was just
Oh.
absolutely outrageous stuff. And, but I mean, it was on Twitter and like, I don't know where else, social media, and people believe it.
Mhm.
That's the scary thing about, and they
Yeah.
make this stuff and it looks so real that people believe it. So they believe Paul
Yeah.
Maurice is saying this shit. And then just yesterday I saw another one after the last game where he was like, they're interviewing him, and he, like I said earlier, he kind of gets like, when his team is losing, he's like, gets a little like flustered and not sure what to say. And he's going and he's saying, they're like, what's it going to be like on Monday for this last game? And he's kind of like, well, it's just another game and another day. And then all of a sudden he's going, oh, who am I kidding? We're fucked. And then I was like, what? And then I was like, oh, that's not real. Oh my God, it was so real. It's
Oh
just,
my God.
it's freaking scary.
Oh my.
Like,
Oh my. That's
It makes
wow.
it harder to discern what is real too. Like,
Yeah.
mhm.
and it's just making it harder. And like you have to
Mhm.
fact check everything. And it's like, oh my God.
Like
Yeah.
exactly. And like now you're afraid to believe anything.
Mhm.
So and then the other funny thing that was and this goes back a few weeks because it was at the end of the New York series
Of
again
the
when
Yeah, the
Chris
last round.
Ryder
Yeah.
grabbed Kachuk's
Of him.
mouth guard out of his mouth and chucks it.
I love it. Oh,
I've never seen anything like that.
so like the thing about Kreider is like if you talk about like national superstars, no. If you talk about local folk heroes, every team has
Personality.
one.
Yeah.
Hours.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
would be hours. Like there are conversations about how he should have been given captain, but the thing is he's given the captaincy, but the thing is like before Truba got it. But the thing is like the thing about Kreider, like Kreider has always been an amazing guy and an amazing player, but the thing is like behind the scenes, like there have been conversations, like very open conversations about the fact that he sees a sports psychiatrist a lot. And like there were concerns, and I feel like if he were offered, like there were concerns about like the pressure of a captaincy on someone's shoulders. But anyway, I digress. So like of all of the people to like do something like that, to like yank something out, like that's not a Kreider thing to do. That's not a him thing to do. But the fact that he did it was just amazing. Like
I had to laugh because after the game when they asked him about it, he's like, "Oh, I don't remember that."
yeah, yeah, that is Kreider. That's literally that's literally like
And
yeah.
then Matthew Kachuk says, that was the best movie he had all night.
Oh, yeah,
Hilarious.
Kreitz is the folk hero. The four, like the fact that he like scored like that many goals to get us into the next round to get us to Florida in the first place. Like, yeah. But
I love
so there
those
we
little
go.
things that happen that are so funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can move on.
Yes.
I'm gonna-
Move on to best rest.
okay,
Our seat picks.
sure. Okay. I did it differently this week since there's just the three of us.
Yeah.
But this is Kelly's, so let's talk about this one.
So that's back, not this most recent series, but it was obviously Connor McDavid is a little bit superstitious because he's wearing the same clothes for 3 games in a row. I just I just think that's
That's funny.
That's
That would make
amazing.
sense.
I love
His
it.
lucky suit.
Yeah, why not? It
Yep.
seems to be working. Superstitions don't always work, but
Does he still wear those socks? Was that him with the really old holy socks?
oh, I don't know.
There was that picture with Shania Twain recently, and like everybody's like, "What the hell?" because of his socks.
They're really
Like
holy and
Shania Twain
good.
came into the lock, yeah, and
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and that was him with the socks.
So I chose Aaron Ekblad. His suit's not like that exciting or anything, but he just has a very nice playoff beard, so I wanted to show
That is an
a
excellent playoff
very
beard.
good one.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And of
Stacey.
course, I can't help myself ever. He's got a three-piece suit on, and also now has scored like he's at the top of the record for playoff goals. You
Yeah,
can't not celebrate number 18, Zach Hyman.
yeah.
So I had to. And so that's him looking at like disbelief. Like that's in my head, he's like, yes, I scored that many goals from my office. Would you have a problem if I were Ovechkin? Like,
He's been so great, and
he is
he's so humble when they talk to him. I love it.
like my heart just flies.
Yeah.
Like I read a conversation somewhere where like he explained to Connor McDavid why he wears number 18, and I was like, that's fantastic. And like how he, interacts with this, how he gets along with his teammates. It's kind of amazing. Like to see him blossom and like, you know, in Edmonton is amazing. So
Yeah, awesome.
yep.
Okay.
So
Time. Kelly, you have book news, don't you?
I have
yeah.
I have sort of book news, yeah. So I just signed a contract with a new publisher. They're called Boldwood Books. They're out of the UK, and they have signed me for a 4-book deal for a new hockey series.
Great, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm super excited about it. I'm writing the first book right now, and it's going great. So I'm happy about that. And I have a book that will be out in August. So we're going to be taking a break over the summer and come back in the fall, I guess, when training camp starts. But
Yep.
I will share my screen and show the cover of Light 'em Up, which comes out August 6th or August 8th. I can't remember. Whatever's the Tuesday.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that.
And I think this is a really fun book too.
That is awesome.
Yay.
I think we've actually just hit 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess we're not sure about when we'll come back, but I think it'll be September, and we'll put the date on socials everywhere of when we're back, and we'll be talking about training camp and the new season and all the stuff that happened over the summer, and that'll be great.
Yay.
Yes, what we did on what our teams and us did on our summer vacation.
Right.
This was awesome. I had a grand old time.
Yeah.
I love chatting hockey and romance novels with you guys. I hope you have a great summer, and yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.